Everyone in Cedar Ridge laughed when 17-year-old Noah Bennett planted 200 half-dead ginseng seedlings on the driest piece of land in the county. But that was not the part they found funniest. The part they could not stop talking about was the row of old beehives he placed along the edge of the field. The boxes were faded, cracked, and patched with scrap wood. Most of the bee colonies inside were weak. Some had already lost their queens. One local farmer looked across the fence and said, "That boy is trying to save dying plants with dying bees." Another man shook his head and added, "By the end of summer, he'll have nothing but empty boxes and dead roots." Noah heard every word. He did not argue. He simply pulled on his gloves, knelt in the hard soil, and pressed another fragile seedling into the ground. What nobody knew was that Noah was not trying to grow a field of plants. He was trying to save his family's land. And before the year was over, the same people who laughed at him would be standing in that field, asking him to teach them how he did it. Cedar Ridge was a small farming town tucked between low mountains in western North Carolina. For generations, families there had raised corn, tobacco, cattle, and apples. People worked hard, but hard work had stopped being enough. Fertilizer costs had gone up, fuel was expensive. Rain came at the wrong time. Young people left town because they saw no future in farming. Noah's family had once owned nearly 60 acres. By the time he turned 17, only 18 remained. His father, Daniel Bennett, had spent most of his life growing corn and raising a small herd of cattle. He was the kind of man who could repair a tractor with wire, patience, and a wrench that was older than Noah. But 3 years earlier, Daniel had died from a sudden heart attack while repairing a fence behind the barn. After that, everything changed. Noah's mother, Rachel, began working double shifts at a nursing home 20 miles away. She left before sunrise and often came home after dark. The cattle were sold. Most of the equipment was auctioned. Every month, another red notice arrived in the mail. The bank had given Rachel until the end of the year to bring the loan current. If she could not, the remaining land would be sold. Noah knew this because he had found the letter beneath a stack of grocery coupons on the kitchen table. His mother had never told him. She did not want him to worry. But Noah had already watched her skip meals, delay repairs, and wear the same winter coat long after the zipper stopped working. One evening, he found her sitting alone on the back steps with her face buried in her hands. "We'll figure it out," she said when she saw him. But her voice did not sound like someone who believed it. The next morning, Noah walked the property before school. The best soil had already been sold with the northern fields. What remained was a rough hillside shaded by maple, poplar, and oak trees. It was too steep for tractors and too rocky for corn. Most people considered it useless. Noah's grandfather had not. Years earlier, before his hands became too weak to work, he had taken Noah into those woods and shown him small plants growing beneath the trees. Wild ginseng, his grandfather had said, worth more than it looks. Noah had been 9 at the time. He remembered the red berries, the thin stems, and the way his grandfather spoke softly, almost as if the plants could hear him. "People think farming means forcing land to grow what you want," the old man had said. "Sometimes the smarter thing is to notice what the land already wants to grow." That memory stayed with Noah. He began reading everything he could find about shade-grown medicinal plants. He learned that American ginseng preferred cool hillsides, rich leaf litter, and filtered sunlight. He learned that mature roots could be valuable, but they took years to develop. Years his family did not have. Then he discovered another plant called golden seal, a woodland herb used in herbal products. It grew faster than ginseng and liked many of the same conditions. Still, plants alone would not solve the immediate problem. Noah needed something that could produce income within months, not years. That was when he started reading about bees. He learned that honeybees could support farms in several ways. They produced honey, increased pollination, and helped build a healthier local ecosystem. He also learned that bees needed a steady supply of flowers throughout the growing season. Ginseng flowers were small and not a major honey source, but the hillside was surrounded by tulip poplar, sourwood, clover, goldenrod, and blackberry. The bees could feed across the whole property. The medicinal plants would benefit from increased pollinator activity. And if the land became healthier, both systems could support each other. It was not a perfect plan, but it was the first plan Noah had found that gave the land more than one job. He used the money he had saved from repairing lawnmowers to buy discounted seedlings from a nursery that was closing. The owner warned him that many of the plants were stressed and might not survive. Noah bought them anyway. Then he heard about a retired beekeeper named Walter Green, who was selling old equipment after a difficult winter killed most of his colonies. Walter had 6 weak hives left. "You don't want these," Walter said when Noah came to see them. "They'll need feeding, new queens, mite treatment, repairs, and more luck than I've got left." "How much?" Noah asked. Walter studied him for a long moment. "What are you planning to do?" Noah explained the hillside, the medicinal plants, the flowers, and the bank letter. Walter did not laugh. He walked to an old shed, returned with a weathered bee suit, and handed it to Noah. "You can take the hives," he said, "but you come here every Saturday for the next 2 months, and you learn how to keep them alive." Noah agreed. When Rachel saw the first truckload of seedlings and broken beehives, she thought her son had lost his mind. "We don't have money for this," she said. "I used my own savings. That was supposed to be for college. If we lose the land, college won't fix that." Rachel looked at the dry hillside, then at the cracked wooden boxes. "What happens if none of this works?" Noah wanted to give her a confident answer. Instead, he told the truth. "I don't know." For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Rachel picked up a shovel. "Show me where the first row goes." The work was harder than Noah expected. The ground was packed with roots and stones. Every planting hole had to be dug by hand. He spread leaf mulch across the hillside, repaired fencing to keep deer out, and carried water in buckets because the old irrigation line no longer reached that part of the property. The bees were even more difficult. One colony became aggressive after losing its queen. Another was so weak that robber bees from a neighboring farm began stealing its honey. Mites damaged 2 hives. Heavy rain flooded the lowest boxes. Noah was stung through his gloves, on his neck, and once directly above his right eye. For 2 days, his face was so swollen that his classmates called him Balloon Head. By early June, nearly a third of the seedlings had died. The surviving plants looked small and tired. The hives produced almost no extra honey, and the bank deadline was 6 months away. That was when the jokes became crueler. People driving past slowed down to look at the strange little field. Someone left an empty jar near the mailbox with a handwritten label that said, "Invisible honey." A farmer named Earl Pritchard told Noah, "You should have planted something people actually buy." Noah looked at the dead seedlings scattered across the slope and wondered whether Earl was right. One night, after his mother had gone to bed, Noah sat alone in the barn with the bank letter in his hands. He had spent nearly all his savings. The bees were barely surviving. The plants were failing. And for the first time, he admitted something he had been afraid to say. He might not be able to save the farm. As he stood to leave, he noticed an old metal cabinet in the corner of the barn. It had belonged to his grandfather. Inside were seed packets, rusted tools, and several notebooks wrapped in a plastic bag. Most of the pages were filled with weather records, planting dates, and hand-drawn maps of the property. One page showed the same hillside Noah was using. His grandfather had marked areas where water collected after storms, where morning sunlight reached the ground, and where wildflowers appeared each spring. At the bottom of the page, he had written one sentence: "A healthy farm is not one crop. It is a conversation." Noah read it 3 times. Then he took the notebook outside. He realized he had made a major mistake. He had treated the hillside like a field. It was not a field. It was a woodland system. The plants needed different moisture levels, different amounts of shade, and more protection from heat. The bees needed more flowering plants close to the hives during the gaps between major blooms. So Noah changed everything. He moved the surviving ginseng seedlings deeper into the shaded areas his grandfather had marked. He planted golden seal on the lower slopes, where the soil held more moisture. Along the field edges, he added clover, mountain mint, bee balm, sunflowers, and buckwheat. Walter helped him split the strongest colony and replace 2 failing queens. Rachel began saving vegetable scraps and coffee grounds for compost. They installed shallow water stations filled with stones so the bees could drink without drowning. Slowly, the hillside changed. By late July, the buckwheat was covered in white flowers. Mountain mint spread along the fence. Bees moved through the property from sunrise until evening. The weakest colonies began to grow. The medicinal plants stopped dying. Then something happened Noah had not expected. The honey started to taste different. Walter noticed it first. He dipped a small spoon into a frame of fresh honey and held it under the light. The honey was amber with a faint green-gold color. Walter tasted it and raised his eyebrows. That's not ordinary clover honey. It carried the warm sweetness of tulip poplar, the spice of mountain mint, and a light floral finish from the late summer herbs. Noah filled 12 jars. He printed simple labels at the public library and wrote, "Bennett Hillside Honey." The first Saturday, he took the jars to a farmer's market. For 2 hours, almost nobody stopped. Then a woman named Claire Morgan approached his table. Claire owned a small herbal tea company in Asheville. She had spent years buying plants from growers across the region and was always searching for farms that used responsible methods. She tasted the honey. Then she tasted it again. "Where did this come from?" she asked. Noah pointed toward the mountains. "My family's land." "What are the bees feeding on?" He explained the poplar, sourwood, mountain mint, clover, buckwheat, and woodland plants. Claire asked to visit the farm. 3 days later, she arrived with a soil specialist and a photographer. Noah expected them to inspect the honey. Instead, Claire spent nearly an hour walking the hillside. She looked at the mulch, the flowering borders, the water stations, the beehives, and the young medicinal plants growing beneath the trees. "You built a whole system," she said. "I'm trying to." Claire knelt beside a row of golden seal. "How much of this will you have next season?" Noah had never thought that far ahead. "Maybe 200 pounds, if it keeps growing." "I'll buy it." Noah stared at her. "All of it?" "All of it, if it meets our quality standards." Then she pointed toward the beehives. "And I want 60 jars of this honey for our holiday gift boxes." "We only made 12. Claire smiled. "Then I'll take 12. The photographer posted a short video that evening. It showed Noah walking through the hillside, explaining how the bees, flowers, trees, and medicinal plants supported one another. It showed Rachel packing honey at the kitchen table. It showed Walter inspecting a frame covered with healthy bees. The video ended with Noah holding one of his grandfather's notebooks. "I thought I had to force this land to become useful," he said. "Turns out, I just had to listen to what it was already trying to do." Within 48 hours, the video had more than 500,000 views. Orders came from across the country. People wanted honey, dried herbs, starter plants, and tours of the farm. Local reporters arrived. A regional grocery chain offered to carry the honey. The 12 jars sold in less than 10 minutes. For the first time in years, Rachel opened the mailbox without fear. By December, the family had earned enough from deposits, honey sales, and a supply agreement with Claire's company to bring the bank loan current. They did not lose the land. But Noah soon faced a new problem. Demand was growing faster than the farm could handle. He could have raised prices, kept the process secret, and built the business for himself. Instead, he called a meeting at the volunteer fire station. Only 9 people came. Walter sat in the front row. Rachel brought coffee. Earl Pritchard, the farmer who had mocked Noah, stood in the back with his arms crossed. Noah explained that Cedar Ridge had hundreds of acres of shaded land that could not support traditional crops. He explained how families could grow medicinal plants beneath existing trees, add pollinator flowers, and keep a few hives without buying expensive machinery. Then he made an offer. "I'll share everything I've learned," he said. "The planting maps, the mistakes, the bee schedules, the buyers, all of it. But we have to agree on quality. No chemicals that harm pollinators. No harvesting wild plants from public land. No shortcuts." Earl raised his hand. "What do you get out of it?" "A stronger supply network." "That's it?" Noah looked around the room. "If this only works for my family, then it doesn't really save Cedar Ridge." The next spring, 5 families joined him. The year after that, there were 18. Walter began teaching free beekeeping classes on Saturdays. Rachel helped organize a cooperative that handled packaging, testing, and shipping. Claire's company signed agreements with multiple growers. Even Earl converted 6 shaded acres into golden seal, black cohosh, and woodland herbs. He also became one of the best beekeepers in the county, though he refused to admit Noah had taught him. Within 4 years, abandoned barns had become drying rooms and small processing spaces. Young people who had planned to leave town began staying. Former tobacco fields were planted with clover and wildflowers. Roadsides that had once been mowed down to bare grass became long strips of blooming plants. The changes were visible, but the changes people could not see were even more important. Apple growers reported better pollination. Vegetable gardens produced more fruit. Native bees returned to areas where they had not been seen in years. Families earned income from honey, herbs, beeswax candles, teas, seedlings, salves, and farm tours. Cedar Ridge became known as the town where farmers grew medicine beneath the trees and honey beside it. 5 years after Noah planted those first dying seedlings, the county opened a small agricultural center on land beside the Bennett farm. The center included a greenhouse, a honey testing room, a classroom, and a shared drying facility for medicinal plants. At the opening ceremony, hundreds of people gathered beneath a white tent. Walter stood beside the first repaired hive. Rachel wore a new winter coat. Claire displayed the first empty jar of Bennett Hillside honey. And near the back of the crowd stood Earl Pritchard, holding a blue ribbon his honey had won at the state fair. When Noah stepped up to speak, he looked across the hillside. The dry ground people had once called useless was now covered in green. Bees moved between flowers. Families walked along the shaded paths. Children watched through the glass wall of an observation hive. Noah could have talked about sales, growth, or awards. Instead, he held up his grandfather's notebook. "My grandfather wrote that a healthy farm is a conversation," he said. "I didn't understand that when I started. I thought the plants needed me. I thought the bees needed me. The truth is, they needed each other, and we needed them." He paused. "A tree gives shade. Flowers feed bees. Bees help plants reproduce. Healthy soil holds water. Farmers share knowledge. Buyers support good work. Nothing survives alone. The crowd became quiet. 5 years earlier, Noah had believed saving the farm meant finding one valuable crop. He had been wrong. The real answer was not one crop. It was connection. The ginseng roots beneath the soil were becoming more valuable each year. The golden seal provided steady income. The bees produced honey. The flowers restored the land. The cooperative created jobs, and the knowledge passed from one family to another made the whole town stronger. The people who had laughed at Noah were not bad people. They had simply learned to see land in one way. A field had to grow corn. A pasture had to hold cattle. A forest had to be cut for timber. A beehive had to produce as much honey as possible. Noah showed them something different. Land could do many things at once. It could feed insects, grow medicine, protect water, support families, and create a future without being stripped empty. Sometimes the thing that changes your life does not look impressive at first. Sometimes it looks like a dying plant. Sometimes it sounds like a weak hive struggling to survive. Sometimes it looks like a dry hillside that everyone else has already given up on. But value is not always loud. It does not always arrive polished, successful, or easy to understand. Sometimes value begins as a small idea that only one person is willing to protect. Noah did not save his family's farm because he had more money, more experience, or better land. He saved it because he paid attention. He noticed what the hillside could grow. He noticed what the bees needed. He noticed that his neighbors needed a reason to hope. And instead of building something that only benefited him, he created a system where every part helped another part survive. That may be the greatest lesson Cedar Ridge learned. Real growth does not come from taking everything you can. It comes from building relationships that make the whole system stronger. The plants supported the bees. The bees supported the land. The land supported the families. And the families supported one another. So the next time someone laughs at an idea because it looks too small, too strange, or too late, remember the dry hillside at the Bennett farm. Remember the broken hives. Remember the seedlings everyone thought were already dead. A future can begin in places that look empty. It can grow from things other people overlook. And sometimes, the difference between failure and transformation is one person who is willing to look closer, work longer, and believe that nothing in nature was created to survive alone.